Alright, moving on to a quick rundown of Cao Xueqin's life. We're not going deep into his personal experiences or anything like that. So, his last name is Cao, and his first name is Zhan. He's also known by the courtesy name Mengwan, and he's got a few other pen names like Xueqin, Qinpuzi, and Qinxie. But these days, we mostly just use Xueqin, which is his pen name. Why do we use that one? Well, in the first chapter of Dream there's a part in Chuhong Chamber where Mr. Cao Xueqin asks to have the words on a stone remembered, and that's been passed down through the years, so that's where the name Xueqin comes from. He was born in 1715, during the 54th year of the Kangxi reign. We've done some digging and that's pretty solid. When did he kick the bucket? In 1763. Some folks say it was 1764, but it's a bit fuzzy. We're going with 1763 because that's the one most people agree on. In 1963, the academic crowd in mainland China had a big shindig to mark the 200th anniversary of Cao Xueqin's passing. Lots of academic journals in China published articles about Dream to honor Cao Xueqin. So, we're rolling with 1763, which means he only lived for 48 years, a pretty early exit, if you ask me. So, Cao Xueqin, Cao Xueqin's ancestor, was originally a Han Chinese who got captured by the later Jin dynasty, which later became the Qing dynasty, right? Then he ended up working as a servant in the household of Dorgan, which boosted his status. His son, Cao Zhenyan, did some impressive stuff in the military and landed a top job as the judicial commissioner of the supervisory office of Zhejiang. Cao Zhenyan's son, Cao Zai, was no ordinary dude, he was actually Cao Xueqin's great-grandfather. Cao Shi's wife, who was also Cao Xueqin's great-grandmother, worked as a nursemaid for the Kangxi emperor, showing she was pretty high up there. During Kangxi's 6 southern tours, he stayed at the Cao family's place 4 times. And every time he arrived, his first words were always, "Where is our elderly lady?" talking about Cao Xueqin's great-grandma. So, you can see the Cao family and Kangxi were pretty tight. Kangxi even appointed Cao Shi as the Jiangning weaving supervisor, which was a big deal. Now, what's the deal with the Jiangning weaving supervisor? Well, officially, it was about getting stuff for the imperial family, but really, it was all about keeping an eye on things for the emperor. If any local official messed up, the Jiangning weaving supervisor would snitch to the emperor, and that could mean big trouble. So, local officials were pretty scared of running into someone in that position. Moving on, Cao Yin was Cao Shi's oldest son and also Cao Xueqin's grandpa. Cao Yin was also pretty special. When he was young, he hung out with Kangxi. Cao Shi's wife worked as a nursemaid for Kangxi, and their son was buddies with Kangxi when he was young. That shows you how close their relationship was. So, Cao Yin also got the gig as Jiangning weaving supervisor. And when Cao Yin's own son passed away, Kangxi told Cao Yin to adopt his nephew as his own son, so he could keep the Jiangning weaving supervisor job in the family. That nephew was Cao Yang, who was Cao Xueqin's dad. In the 5th year of Emperor Yongzheng's rule, anyone who had been in with Kangxi, his father, got the boot, or worse, and Yongzheng brought in his own crew, causing a major shakeup. The Cao family was tight with Kangxi, right? So 5 years after Kangxi kicked the bucket, Yongzheng found a way to seize the Cao family's stuff. So, the Cao family sent a letter to the emperor, basically saying, "Our bad, please go easy on us." Yongzheng was kind of chill about it, letting them keep some of their stuff, but they had to bounce from Nanjing and set up shop in Beijing. So, off they went. Cao Xueqin was 13 at the time, which was no joke, especially for a high-class family. He had been through a lot, right? This was when he saw the whole Cao family take a nosedive. When Cao Xueqin was in his 20s, the Cao family totally went downhill. When they first got to Beijing, guess where he crashed? Maybe in the Shihu Hutong in Xidan. Cao Xueqin was grinding as a secretary or clerk at this fancy school called the right-wing school. It was a school for rich kids, and he was just a low-level worker. How do we know all this history? Well, Cao Xueqin was tight with these high-class brothers, Guomin and Guocheng, and they were always spitting poetry and songs. By the 15th year of the Emperor Qianlong reign, Cao Xueqin was out in the boonies of Beijing, couldn't hack it in the city. What was his hustle like? Just like it says in the first chapter of Dream, he was living in a raggedy old shack, with a straw bed and a basic kitchen. They were scraping by, eating porridge most days because they couldn't afford anything better. In the midst of all this struggle, Cao Xueqin penned, Dream of the Red Chamber. So, you know that old Chinese saying, you gotta be poor before you can make it big? Well, it's true. An artist's work has to be top-notch, that's what we call making it big. And what's the secret ingredient? Poverty. An artist can't be living the high life, but they've gotta have tasted happiness at some point. You can't grow up dirt poor and expect to become an artist, right? If you're born into a super wealthy family, you get it all, right? You grow up, you start to get things, and you soak up all that culture, right? But then, when you hit rock bottom and life gets real tough, that's when the masterpieces start flowing. It's the same deal in European art history, you know? Most of the big-shot musicians were scraping by before they hit it big. Not many of them were living the good life, like Beethoven, Mozart, and the rest, right? Mozart kicked the bucket in his 30s, and we all know how rough things were for him before that. Reading his letters about his struggles just breaks your heart. Here's this amazing musician, freezing in the winter with no fuel for heat, so he and his wife had to dance to keep warm. And hey, thanks to the Cao family's downfall, the Chinese people got Dream of the Red Chamber. The way it all came together, and that poem by Shi Xiangyun about 10 years of hard work, it's pretty much the same deal. In the first chapter of Dream, Cao Xueqin is in the Red Chamber, right? Some Taoist dude hands him the story of the stone, and he reads it over and over, saying he subsequently worked on it for 10 years, revised it 5 times, and made major changes 5 times. We don't need to go on and on about this. Every word is like blood, 10 years of hard work is extraordinary. That's the poem by Shi Xiangyun. Let's not get into the nitty-gritty of the version. Anyways, Dream of the Red Chamber was put together in 2 main ways, the handwritten version and the printed version. Cheng Weiyuan teamed up with Gao Yi Cheng Weiyuan, a businessman, went all over the place searching for the lost last 40 chapters. Word has it, he even managed to find a bit of it. He went all out searching, from the homes of book collectors to piles of old paper, he paid close attention. After several years, he had only managed to find over 20 volumes. One day, he happened to obtain over 10 volumes on a street vendor, so he purchased them at a high price, eagerly read through them, and found that they were still connected, but in a disorganized state and could not be tidied up. He then meticulously edited them with a friend. And that friend was Gao Yi. After fixing it up and adding some parts, the manuscript was completed, and then it was engraved onto blocks, which is how the printed version came about. Before that, it was all handwritten. We just make a quick mention of the facts here, and you get the gist, right? Okay, now let's dive into the mystery of Dream of the Red Chamber. So, why is Dream of the Red Chamber so mysterious? Well, I think it's because of its complex storytelling. You see, the whole novel is like a big symbol that reflects the author Cao Xueqin's Buddhist beliefs. He's all about Buddhism, and that's why the book starts off talking about Buddhist emptiness right from the get-go. Is the fifth chapter some kind of trippy dream or what? It's all about how Jia Baoyu and Lin Dayu came to be, and it's set in this dreamland. Baoyu was actually a stone, not some fancy jade which his name suggests, but having existed long enough in this dreamland, became sentient. Then, he spots this dying crimson pearl grass. He starts watering it with rain and dew every day, bringing it back to life. And get this, the crimson pearl grass has its own feelings. It's thinking, how can I ever repay this guy for all the care and attention? But it figures there's only one way: if he goes to the real world, she'll go too, and she'll spend her whole life crying to repay him. That crimson pearl grass? That's Lin Dayu. One's a stone, the other's a plant, but they're like a pair, you know? So, the whole thing about Baoyu and Dayu has its roots in this dreamland, and they call it the solemn pledge even if it's just between trees and rocks. When we come into this world, the world is called Sa, the realm of appearances in Buddhism. The term Sa refers to the phenomenal world or the world of phenomena. We often mistake the worldly reality as the true reality, but in fact, it is empty. It's a realm of great illusion, and what we perceive as an illusion is actually the true reality. Therefore, this realm of great illusion has an archway with a horizontal plaque bearing 4 characters, Tai Su Huan Jing, which means the realm of great illusion. There is also a couplet associated with it. How does the first line go? When falsehood becomes truth, truth becomes falsehood. And the second line? The existence of nothingness, and the non-existence of something. People often confuse the concepts of truth and falsehood, and existence and non-existence. We find ourselves in this present reality, taking it as the truth, but it is actually false. We refer to it as mistaking a foreign land for one's homeland. We are merely passing through as transient visitors, experiencing it once and that's all. Everything is impermanent, but we mistakenly perceive it as permanent. Then we consider the realm of great illusion as false. So, the inscription on the archway says, when falsehood becomes truth, truth becomes falsehood. The realm of great illusion was originally true, but because we mistake the false nature of the worldly realm as truth, the realm of great illusion appears false. This piece of stone, when it enters the human world, transforms into jade. The stone itself is simple and unadorned. Yu, which sounds similar to transient, is a play on words. In the novel Dream of the Red Chamber, the names of the characters are often homophones. However, it will eventually return. After wandering amidst the bustling world, it will return to emptiness. Sakong is a concept in Buddhism, represented by a character named Baoyu, a piece of jade which is also a stone. This represents a Buddhist idea. The second part of the structure is what they call social realism. In Dream of the Red Chamber, there are a bunch of side stories and off-topic bits. At first glance, it might seem like they're just there to move the story along, you know, like a bridge between scenes. But actually, all these little detours include stuff about real life, so there's no wasted space in Dream. When a new character shows up and we need to know what they're up to, well, that's gotta be written, right? And when it's written, it includes real-life stuff. So, we gotta keep an eye on these side stories and off-topic bits in Dream because they're all about real life. For instance, to tell the story of Xuepan, his mom Xue Yinyang, and his sister Xue Baochai heading to the capital, we gotta talk about where they ended up. And they ended up staying at the Jia family's place. To explain this, there's a chapter that goes off on a tangent about a monk named Hulu making a wrong call in a legal case about a gourd. This is an example of a side story where real-life stuff is mixed into the story. The third part of the structure is all about the ups and downs of the Jia family, showing how a family's fate can change. Another part of the structure focuses on the main characters, the 12 beauties of Jinling, and how their personalities and destinies are portrayed. We really dig into this part. Where does Shi Xiangyun come from? What happens to her later on? And what's her ultimate fate? And for each of the 12 beauties, including Xiaojia, who's one of them, her future isn't as rosy as marrying a rich guy from the countryside, as it's shown in the last 40 chapters. In Dream there's this grand hall in the illusory space, right? Inside, there's a big cabinet with drawers, and in those drawers, there's the Book of Fate, which hides the life and death destinies of important women in the capital in a painting and a poem. So, what's the painting of Xiaojia? It shows a woman spinning and weaving in a lonely mountain shop. But I think this portrayal in the last 40 chapters isn't quite right. Why would she need to spin and weave after marrying into a wealthy family? It must be a sign of poverty, marrying into a really poor family. But hey, for Xiaojia, it's still a pretty good outcome. After the whole Jia family falls apart, what does she ultimately go back to? Life. She returns to the earth. So, that's how the destinies of the 12 beauties are presented in the structure. In traditional Chinese culture, we believe that something said casually in the past might actually come true in the future. That's why people often say that our words have power and should be spoken carefully, right? In Dream of the Red Chamber, there are lots of examples of this. For instance, the poems written by the remarkable women, and even the riddles they came up with. When you write a poem, you might not even realize that it's secretly hinting at your future fate. The people themselves don't know, and Cao Xueqin wrote a poem for each of them, right? Each person has their own unique poem, and the words and phrases in each one hide the person's future destiny, which will come true later on. It's not just about poetry and literature, there are other things too. Take for example, the unicorn. In Dream of the Red Chamber, there's a part about Shi Xiangyun, right? She was strolling in the Daguan garden with her maid, and the maid spotted something shiny in the grass. She went over, picked it up, and it turned out to be a golden unicorn, a male one. Now, Xiangyun already had a unicorn, a female one. When the maid picked it up and saw it, she laughed and said that it was a perfect match with the unicorn on Xiangyun's body, one male and one female. This chapter is written like this. Each chapter has a title, right? The title of this chapter says Cause. The cause of the cause, 'cause of the unicorn laying in waiting, waiting until old age. So, when Xiangyun picked it up and saw it, it was indeed a perfect match with the unicorn on her body. She looked at it in a daze, in a daze. What was she thinking after all? The book doesn't say, but what is hidden in this part? What does waiting until old age mean? It means growing old together. Who will Xiangyun end up with in the future? Eventually, she becomes the wife of Baoyu, after the decline of the family's fortune. Xiangyun was married before, right? She had a good marriage, and it should be said that the two of them had similar interests. But her husband died at a young age, and Xiangyun became a widow. After the decline of the Jia family, everyone scattered and went their separate ways, and they met later on. We've seen this in the TV adaptation of Dream, right? Their later encounter is based on the foreshadowing in the first 80 chapters of Dream of the Red Chamber. So, these things, like a pair of unicorns, are all omens, hiding their future outcomes. This is called prophecy and fulfillment, struggle and destiny, such a structure. In Dream these 5 aspects are all intertwined, like a big puzzle, right? No wonder Yu Pingbo said, I wonder how he will bring it all together. It's endless, and cannot be completed.